On our morning show today from WRCO, we are in the studio with Tom Crofton, who's a part of a local vision, talking about trying to reconfigure the Richland campus setting. Tom, this is a vision that you've had for a little while, since things went south a few years ago.
Yeah, I was on the county board around 2010 for about 6 years, and at the time I was trying to find ways to develop other revenue streams or look at our operating costs and stuff like that. And one thing I discovered is we actually, as a region, export 20% of our GDP all the time for fuel and power. And so I was looking into possibilities of how would you make local power keep the money here. And it turns out we have biomass all over the hills, all these trees falling down. About 80% of our land around here is actually woods or scrubland. And also in the process of having some logging done on our land, I rent a mini excavator from Simpsons and clean up the chops behind it and make piles of good firewood and pull out a few good logs. I got a little sawmill, but all the chips, I mean, it's just incredible. It turns out I did a little project back when I was on the board of looking at how would you heat the school and the campus and the high school. They're both right next to each other with biomass. And it turns out there's a fella down the road in Dodgeville that they do systems for handling sawdust and stuff for big sawmills. And that's one of their big issues is making heat out of the wood chips to run the process, the kilns or whatever they have. And so there's actually expertise around here. And in this study, it turned out that we could have, in like 7 or 8 years, paid off a system that would save all this money. It would be the local heat and power. You can make electricity out of the wood fire, too. There's 3 or 4 different ways of taking the heat out and getting electricity. And then that would be local fuel. So you'd be paying people to bring the fuel in instead of paying for natural gas or electricity brought in. And it turns out if you spend money locally instead of sending it away, it gets multiplied 4 or 5 times, 6, 7 times, depending on what analytics you want to use. And so a 5 times 20% is 100%. You're talking doubling the local economy if you start switching over to the local fuels. Mm-hmm. And so that's a general goal. But to study all that, I think there's an opportunity for the campus to be reformed. I call it community college. It wouldn't be part of the university system. And when you think of all the things we need around here, you've got nursing and aging care workers, teaching. There's a bunch of local interest in redeveloping some of the things that the college campus started out as originally. And then when you add some of the things I'm talking about of sustainable energy, sustainable ag, trying to find ways to do local economic development, you know, we need housing around here. We need workers. We need to build 500 or 1,000 houses or something over the next decade to make the economy grow. And if we could do that with a system of local energy, all of a sudden we would have created these jobs out of basically nothing to create an economic boom around here that would be based on what we have here locally, including food. When you think of all the food, you go buy a tomato right now, it comes from Chile or something on an airplane. And that's crazy, you know, where we could be growing. If you had a power plant that had waste heat, you have greenhouses. You grow food all winter long and have it locally in the stores and schools. So there's a lot of possibilities. And what my idea here is that we start out right now getting anybody interested in reforming a community college to think of all the different parts that they would care about and what they'd want to bring their expertise for. And when you think about it, we probably have everyone from musicians to physics professors. We have all these different people living in the area. So any different emphasis people wanted to see developed, we already have the people here locally to do it.
The cost of the building upgrade, though, right now, some of the estimates that have come in are just astronomical.
Yeah, I was in construction for 40 years, or 50 years, whatever, yeah. And I understand all that, and I've been involved in building high-rises and houses and all that. So they're actually very savable, but obviously there's a cost. There are some issues with underground water that I was hoping people would deal with. Cutting a trench behind the library and the classroom building so that water coming out of the hill isn't going under the slabs and breaking them up. All the sidewalks were starting to heave from that originally, and they did some work on fixing that. But so there's some things to do to preserve, and maybe you got to tear a building down or something. I understand. Nothing I'm saying is dissing the people that are working on this. There's all kinds of ideas, but what it's missing, I think, is the vision overall. What do we want the community to be? So I'm asking people to get together and put all their different visions together. And if we did it through the idea of this community college, that'd be a way to study all the different things and and contact other experts in the field from other universities and colleges that would know something to help us out, and through distance learning and all that. So actually what I'm talking about is starting the idea of continuing education first out of volunteers, all these people with interest and knowledge, and then over time see if you can develop the program to really exist as a college.
For various topics and degrees and things like that?
Every different one that people can imagine. Because when you think about it, the healthcare is a huge thing. I recently had some health issues, and I was at the Richland Hospital and having problems, and seeing all these young, energetic people coming, nurses and aides and stuff coming to help. It was really uplifting. But yet there's a demand for more of that, and there's the aging population. There's a lot of home care needed, and so all those things are real. We certainly always need more teachers, but then all the arts and sciences, and of course we got the theater people. You've got all these different qualities around here that we could put together and really create our own version of a college that met our own needs locally.
So you're looking to possibly get this group together and have a meeting and just kind of hash things out then, it sounds
right. Like. I was starting to do a big PowerPoint to kind of graph out all the different interrelations. You get this ecology of all these arrows and bubbles and blobs of different things, and you realize that every input to a process has a result and also maybe a waste product. Well, that waste product is actually an input for another process, and you create this big web and it is economic activity is what you're doing. So the waste product from one situation becomes the fuel for another one. And actually recognizing those, instead of having things just fall off the edge of the table, we actually reuse it, and that's what makes this multiplier effect work.
Have you contacted any of the people that were at the campus years ago, Tom?
Yeah, I've talked to quite a few of the people, and unfortunately, like myself getting older, people are having their health issues and, are kind of fed up. And I would just say that one of the problems with what happened is everything dropped down on us really quickly, and without planning on our end at all about cutting down the campus and the way it was dismantled slowly over the last 10 years. But we need a new energy. We need a new idea, because we're never going to get back what was there. That being part of the UW and all that, that's obviously gone. So do you want to do it ourselves? We want to do something different. And I think we have the people here to do it. We got all the qualities. And it's not my thing. I just want to help create this thing, get some energy going, and have other people have their input to it and see what we can do.
Could you see like a GoFundMe or some sort of way to start raising funds?
I could certainly see that, and I could also see that there's probably some folks who have much greater assets than I do that would be willing to help kick it into gear. But let's think, for example, we got institutions around here that need a workforce. The hospital could be involved in helping set up their part of it. And certainly the expertise exists. Whether we can get the funding worked out, that's going to take a while. But the thing I wanted to mention, if we start getting into these other revenue streams, we could all of a sudden have a revenue stream that could do all kinds of things. We have almost every building around here that's part of the government, either county or city, needs major repair. And if you start adding up all these things to do all new, it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And we don't have that kind of money around here. We've got a relatively stagnant population, relatively stagnant economy, and we also have an influx of a new population, Hispanic people. They got to be involved in all this, and they need housing, and they're good working folks. And so if we could think about making a new development of housing, say out the west end of town or up on the hill behind the college, and have it heated with a local power plant that brought in local fuels, and we start creating our own electricity, the funding, the revenue that comes out of that more than pays for the equipment and the installation, and there would actually be a surplus that you could do some of these other things like support the revival of the campus or whatever we thought was important as a group. You're basically talking about doubling the economy in a decade. And I don't hear of anybody else coming up with a plan to do any of that.
Someone took over a couple of the theaters at some of these two-year campuses that were shut down, but that's another possibility if you could get someone to help out, maybe get some sort of grant or something for the Copper Top.
Absolutely. And that's another example of the fine arts. Sometimes folks kind of diss the fine arts, and they think people should be only dealing with technical things. And technical things are great, but having that complete, well-rounded thing and the experience is... And think back also, when we first came to the area about 35 years ago, Dean Kempthorne was doing his lecture series, and he had he filled up rooms with people listening to whatever topic he wanted to talk about because it was interesting. The continuing education idea, it's not just a 3-year, 4-year, whatever thing. It's like a lifetime of learning experience. And I just think we have so much to share. The fine arts that you're mentioning is certainly a big part of that.
No doubt about it. Anything else you want to add today, Tom?
No, I think the big thing is that we got to get involved before the folks thinking about tearing things down get too far along, and give them some input. And anybody who wants to get a hold of me, please get a hold of me at tcrofton@mwt.
All right, sounds good. Tom Crofton, our guest on today's morning show.